Okay. Should be live again. This really sucks. Let's see if anybody comes back. But I will continue answering the questions, and if people find their way in, I will start answering your questions again. Because I have a lot lined up here. So let me know how it works now. Let's see. Where were we? We were... Lost Millennial. Well, how did you find your style of grading? All your videos look surreal. I think a lot of it had to do with me working as a still photographer, and I like the type of matte black that a lot of still photographers use. During the Arab Spring. I find it like really pleasing because you, I don't know, you get some type of different feeling when you watch images like that. So that's part of what I like, and I think a big inspiration for me was Martina Hugland Ivanov, which is a photographer, and she has a matte, really dark, moody one. So I think that kind of inspired me to work like that and try to recreate it within film, because I used to take that type of pictures that kind of reminds you of the analog days maybe. But then, that kind of transitioned into, you know, what it is today. But it took a long time for me to kind of nail that look. And I think if I look at the early vlogs, they look very different, in my opinion, than it looks like today. So I think I'm getting closer and closer to what I'm after. But it's also changing because I try new things. I try different types of grades, or like, okay, so for a while I go with a little bit more contrast, and then a little less, and back and forth. And you get it can be really easy, but it can also be really complicated in certain areas. So I still can't kind of color balance all the images I do. So sometimes you have to compromise, and you have type of, I don't know, a way of doing it that maybe isn't as traditional as maybe a schooled colorist would do. So yeah. Like telling stories with colors. If you make it blue, it should be, you know, cold, and then when it's really warm, it's really romantic. I don't buy into that at all. I think it has more to do with, you know, the camera movement and maybe the amount of light. So in my opinion, you know, it's more about putting the people that are watching. Grading is a big part of doing that. So that's actually why I like it so much, because you can create a consistent story world. Okay, so Lena Lauren asks, any advice on treatment and grant writing? I find it difficult to do those for my personal doc when I don't know a phone, sound and best practices during filming. I think in terms of writing treatments and synopsis and that sort of thing, I think it's very important, or it's probably crucial if you want to apply for grants, that you learn those things. And even though you don't have the story, even though you don't even believe this is going to be the story, you have to be able to write a good synopsis that is like crafted in a professional way, which means that you have to have a dramaturgy and a whole conflict and resolution and all that in mind. When I wonder what was the first here. Maybe that wasn't even the first one. Maybe there was one. Actually, there was one before that. So there was one make-believe version of it, which was basically, I don't know if you've seen Michael Winterbottom, A New World, something like that. It's really documentary style, and they went with amateur actors on a real type of refugee journey from, I guess, Afghanistan. I think it's Afghanistan, and then to the UK, I think. So they went on this whole journey, or it's Pakistan, I'm not sure, but they go on that whole journey and follow along these characters that are amateurs, but it becomes so intense because it's real, but it's, you know, fiction. And that's really what I was writing the first synopsis around, that concept of going with a refugee to Sweden, or wherever it would take place. I'm not sure it was Sweden, but so the first was make believe. On the project, where I led Uganda to Sweden, 2 guys, and then I started doing the whole research with them. I had started this workshop. It would be like 3 weeks divided in like 6 months or something, and in the middle of all that, one of the characters didn't want would happen to his family back in Uganda, so I had to kind of stop that project, because I didn't feel like, even though the story was amazing, I couldn't continue making it. I had to find a different character. So then that synopsis went away, and I had to go to Uganda to figure out what is the story, and then eventually it became a transgender love story. But you know, that whole thing changed during the process. But you really have to be able to write a concept in the beginning that is has a dramaturgy that you can follow when you shoot, that has a story that you can follow when you shoot, even though it's going to change, because everybody knows it's going to change, but you know, you still have to have one way to. You can also go to film festivals. They usually have these kind of lab workshop things where you can get input, so they can help out to give you a lot of input on your treatment and synopsis and how you should approach things, and then also ask the people that you want to apply from. That's often the best way, for us at least, to kind of talk to them. And then self-shooting, I think, get a camera that is the best one that you can afford. Get good audio, which is basically the least you should do is to get a wireless microphone, like a wireless lavalier microphone, and then to have a Rode mic, but I don't like them, but still it's the least you should do, because audio will just be horrible if you don't do it. And then shoot in a way that's, you know, custom to what equipment you have. If you can't, for instance, audio 2 people if you only have one microphone. That's how I would approach it, at least, because yeah, it's kind of hard otherwise. Because always when you do small time independent films, the only asset you have is what you got, right? So you have to kind of approach every project from that. If you can do that, then you can always finish your film. If you never see like an end to it, like without funding, then it's probably not gonna end up well. It's probably gonna stop in the middle or something because you didn't get funded. So kind of approach it in a way that, okay, so I can afford this. Maybe I have to shoot it in 2 years' time on vacation for 2 weeks at a time or 1 week at a time. So set those like barriers, and then make sure that you go and you shoot in those times. Or maybe you have a month. Okay, I take a month off, I shoot. Let me see. Sound is okay, so I don't want to stop again. I'm gonna upload this one in normal anyways, so if you can't bear with it, it's gonna be up soon anyways in high resolution. So have you ever needed to do film projects you didn't like or wasn't passionate about just in order to pay the bills? Always, every day. How with what you're passionate about. I guess that's the balance. Like, you have to think about, okay, so this is what I want to do, right? So, okay, I want to do feature films and I want to be able to sustain myself, and that's X amount of whatever money you have to work with, or whatever you need to survive. So if you kind of can say what that is, so decide how much you're going to earn each year. Like, well, that's just stupid. That's just a way to fail, basically. But still, you have to be able to survive off it, and you have to maybe save up money, and you have to pay for a kid or a house and all those things. And then kind of think about it, like, how much time do you need to do that, and what makes you kind of, hate yourself, because you can always like, okay, 1 week a year I can go and film what I really like, but the rest of the year I have to suffer and do all this shit. So it's not really a sustainable way, but if you're starting out, you need to kind of start small, I think. And making a doc can be a perfect way, like making a feature doc, because making a feature doc makes you kind of leap so much more forward than you do if you make a short film. But I have friends who's made short films and their whole career has popped off in just a couple of months, making like big commercials for big brands and making a lot of money just with sex or whatever it is that you really think is your way forward. Like, I don't want to work with advertising, for instance, if I can't do the type of projects that I think is good, or that I at least can stand behind. Then I'm not interested in it, because I don't need the money. So it's not like, I'm going to go and work with a brand that I don't believe in. That's not going to happen. I'm not that desperate. So avoid being in that situation. And that's something that you can do if you have a long-term plan. First step would probably be to save up a buffer so that you have, money enough so you can say no to projects. First, maybe that is 3 months, then it's 6 months, then it's a year, and then that goes on. If you have that, then you have more of a safety to avoid being in that situation where you have to do everything. So that's one way of doing it, but having your own equipment has been another for me. Like, I can go and I can make films on the level that I want to make them because I own the equipment. If I didn't, then it would be a big step. Every time I wanted to go out and shoot a documentary, I would have had to have much more funding for it. Now I can just go make an advertising thing, and then I can actually take like a month off and then come back to advertising and make up for that month. But pretty hard if you survive, and in that position you have a hard time saving up money, and especially if you do freelancing for others, because what happens is that the people that produce, they make much more money than you. For instance, if you run around and you make like $300 as a DOP, then you are not well paid, and you are probably really crappy paid in comparison to people that are working in advertising that are, famous DOPs, because they can probably get like $1,000 or $1,500 a day. So it's kind of weird to be in that situation. If you're there, then you probably have to hijack your own career better than where you're at now so that you can get better paid. But it's hard to do that just by continuing to doing crappy work that you don't really want to show anyone. You really have to kind of go out and do projects that are the type getting paid, for instance. There's so many of the successful directors that do everything for free. That is their career, basically. So everybody that makes music videos, that's always for free. Everything goes into the production. And the people that don't put it into production, they suffer. Because that's how you kind of... Dust35. Could you comment on the grade aesthetics of my video Estetisk Experiment 1? So let me see if I can find it. Now maybe I will break the stream just because I'm YouTubing, but we will see if I can find it. Would you say the GH5 Vlog is a needed investment? Do you use it? I always use it. I have shot pan natural profile for 2 years. Would it improve my end result? Not necessarily, I don't think. I think it's better, of course, if you're grading, but the thing is that I think that anything I've had from the Canon 5D Mark II days that are shot in neutral profile and that is correctly exposed and doesn't have a lot of noise, maybe it's a little bit less sharp, but I can make it look pretty much the same as I can the C300 Mark II. It's not about so much about like the camera and everything, but it's more about like the artifacts that you might get, because you get more artifacts when you have a compressed signal and you have, for instance, all the shadows are crushed and you have if you underexpose, for instance, you have no latitude of bringing that up, and that's what affects the most when you don't shoot in log mode, because log mode would kind of, it will compress the signal in order for you to then kind of bring it out and get more detail or less noise and still have detail, because you can probably get the same type of look either way. So is it worthwhile? I would say so for me, but I don't think it is that for everybody. If you're used to it and you're satisfied, I don't think you notice that big of a difference. I think maybe you'll suffer because you have to learn to grade for log if you do it. But of course, if you are confident that you can handle a log mode and all that, then for sure it's going to be better because you're going to get less noise. But it's not that obvious. Like it's a much bigger thing of shooting in, for instance, I rarely shoot actually in 4K, the 400 megabit setting. I usually shoot in 1080p, but then in 210 bit, and I'm satisfied with that. So it's not like you have to have like the highest all the time. I mean, 4K is a very uninteresting thing to me. I don't like to kind of reframe my images in post. That kind of takes away the point of being a DOP. Yeah. Have you cut on Avid Media Composer and do you like it? Only a little bit. It's an amazing program, but I just didn't have the patience to learn it. So since I grade so much, if I would have been an editor only, I would probably have jumped to Avid when I was leaving Final Cut a couple of years ago. But the reason why I ended up in Resolve is because I do so much of going from like editing to grading and back and forth. So that's why I don't use it, but it's much better for making a long feature doc, for instance, because it can handle data much better. But it also is a different way of working because you do work like I do in video into Avid. You usually convert it because then it's super high performance, but all programs would be high performance if you converted it to proxy files. So it kind of tricks you to be quicker than the other programs, I think. Wicked West Films. Hey bud, love your work. How would you recommend getting funding for projects other than applying from film councils? I haven't done this, but I know a lot of friends of mine who's worked with documentaries for a longer period of time. They've often gotten a lot of the development funding from private investors. So that could be some, I don't know if it's called mecenat in English, perhaps, but some type of art investor. Like, they don't expect their money back more than like, okay, they want their money back and they're happy, but I don't think they invest in it because they think it's a good investment. I think it's more about supporting arts. If you can find that kind of rich person, then that is a good way. But that has a lot to do with, having relationships with people. So if you have relationships with the rich people, then you shouldn't be afraid of asking them for supporting you. Because the thing with rich people is that they love the glamour and being at a film festival and being at this premiere. So if you can pitch that they can go to, so if you sell a lot of this financially, of course they like films and all that, and they want to support art, but they of course love also to be part of this whole film festival and get, to experience that whole thing and get to feel special within that field. So those great plays. I think I have a hard time with crowdfunding because it's so dependent on you having an audience and being able to build an audience. But if you are able to build an audience, crowdfunding is amazing. I think filmmakers should probably look at different ways of selling, their knowledge and all that instead, because I usually fund my development funding by doing advertising. And that's much more efficient for me, and we're asked to do stuff, so we rather turn stuff down than the opposite. So for us it's always easier to just say yes to one more job and then put that money into the film instead of kind of going the opposite way. And I think if you do so, we did that with my new film for like a year. So let's say we put in like just for like expenses and traveling and all that, and we shot maybe for like three and a half weeks or something, and then we put some editing in to do a trailer, and that's all it was. And then after that we feel more comfortable because we've done that, we've shot it, we have the proper characters, we see how they tie together. Then it's easier to write a good application. So we try to fund that ourselves first, and then we go and apply. Hopefully we get funding, but you never know. Steps after that either way. So we're still waiting. We've just applied, but it took us a year to kind of put the application together. So I think you should kind of think about it in that sense, that if you can fund the development phase yourself, because the way that funding works is that you're always after in terms of getting money in. So you always have to fund it first, then get money back, and then fund the next stage, get money back. I actually got an invite to Amsterdam in June today to speak at some conference. I will let you know. I got a question asking when I will be in Amsterdam. Simon Barnes, hey, didn't think you'd answer the question. Look, actually, maybe that could be a part of this too, this whole live Q&A session. That's probably something that could be interesting. And that reminds me that I was going to watch a film. Let me see if I can find it. What do you say? Should it be a separate video or should it be part of this live Q&A session, giving feedback? Maybe on one or two, something. I can't find this video on Dust 35. Okay, I found it. Let me see. Question was grading, right? Aesthetics and grading. Okay, so if I screw up, you know what happened. It's actually loading, nothing is happening. This internet is screwing me up today. Okay, so I will probably answer you then on that video instead to give you feedback, because this will probably screw this up. So let's see, last question. go. Do you think the new Mavic Air is a good investment for serving not just as a drone but also as a handheld gimbal for occasional outdoor shots? I'm just a poor student and hobby filmmaker. Like, I'm not sure because I don't like the Mavic Pro so much, and the reason for that is that it has a very weird noise reduction algorithm. So if you reduce like the sharpness, it starts to do like noise reduction, so everything looks unnatural. So you have to have it more sharp than you would like, and that kind of creates, especially when you're flying, you get these lines everywhere. I'm not sure, but I haven't seen if that's the case. It's kind of hard to see because everybody puts up like short clips and then cut to something else, and to compare it to that one and to that one, they can't just stick on one one shot and let it be. So you have time to kind of, in a way, like the Mavic is a perfect, amazing, but also you have really big limitations. But if you're a film student, poor hobby filmmaker, it should probably be enough for you. But don't expect it to maybe be so practical to go around with it as a gimbal. Maybe it can be for a while, but I think that battery life and all those things can be kind of annoying, and having like, okay, so you have that stabilized phone, those things are maybe kind of annoying. I don't know. Giuseppe: hey man, I've seen your video about making money with filmmaking. How could I earn money if I'm a film student, cinema engineering? If I'm a student, I don't know if you read film then, because I made that up. You're a student, cinema engineering. I don't really know if that is filmmaking or cinema engineering. Are you making cameras? Then probably make cameras. But if it's filmmaking, probably make films. I'm not sure. Oh, if you don't have a career making films, I mean, you can always go out and do like wedding stuff and all those things, but to do it while you're a student is kind of hard. I would probably focus more on kind of investing in creating a YouTube channel if I was a student. I see a lot of like young filmmakers that are in like USC and that sort of thing that are doing that, and I think that you're not going to make, that would be one way of doing it. But otherwise, I mean, assisting is always the best way to start out, to kind of understand what you want to do. If you're in film school, don't really know what you want to do, then that's probably one way of figuring that out. Yeah, okay, so sorry for the very problematic live stream, but I will see you again, and I will hopefully have better connection. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.